Welcome to another episode of Traffic Island. I'm your host, Linda Roy. You see their names on the memorial signs along the highway, at overpasses, bridges, and traffic islands, the brave veterans who sacrificed their lives for our country. Follow me as we profile the veterans behind the names you see on the signs. Let's not forget them. Leo Forcier was 28 years old when he joined the Army in 1944. He was born October 22, 1916. He was the son of Wilfred and Mary Forcier. He had 3 brothers, Wilfred, George, and Arthur, and a sister Helen. They lived on Ring Road in Kingston, Massachusetts. According to the 1940 census, Leo was employed as a shoe laborer. In 1941, Leo married Anna Gamache, and the two made their home in Middleborough, Massachusetts. They welcomed daughter Anne into the world in 1943. Inducted into the U.S. Army on March 9, 1944, Sergeant Forcier received his initial training at Fort McClellan and Fort Meade. He was then stationed at Camp Miles Standish in Taunton, Massachusetts. He shipped out in October 1944 for overseas duty. Back home, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet debuted on CBS Radio. The St. Louis Cards beat the St. Louis Browns 4-2 in the 41st World Series. The U.S. Navy allowed women of color to join the Waves, which is the Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service. During his first year in the military, Sergeant Forcier was involved in many battle engagements while in Europe and was at Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge. But it was on Saturday, March 24, 1945, Sergeant Forcier's military service would come to a tragic end. According to military reports, he was leading a squad from F Company of the 18th Infantry. Published reports state that Sergeant Forcier and his squad were defending a house that was being contested by the Germans when he was killed instantly by a shell fragment fired from a German tank. Sergeant Forcier earned the Silver Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, Infantryman's Badge, and the Purple Heart. After losing his life in Germany, his body was buried on March 28, 1945, in the United States Military Cemetery in Belgium, according to a letter Mrs. Forcier received from his commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel John Williamson. Clarence Hayward of the American Legion Post 64 had been notified by military authorities of Sergeant Forcier's body being transported to Boston. Hayward, in preparation of the arrival of Sergeant Forcier's body, arranged to have an honor guard posted at the Fahey Funeral Home. Legion members, along with the VFW veterans, carried his casket into Sacred Heart Church for a high mass of requiem. Members of both military posts lined each side of the church entryway, with a flag detail and firing squad. After the funeral service, the assemblage was led to St. Mary's Cemetery by members of the Middleborough High School Band playing muffled drums. At St. Mary's Cemetery, the veterans conducted military rituals, including the firing of 3 volleys and playing of taps. The flag covering the casket was presented to Mrs. Leo Forcier by William Hines, American Legion chaplain of Post 64. His body was finally laid to rest at St. Mary's Cemetery in Middleborough on December 12, 1945. Sergeant Forcier was honored by the towns of Kingston and Middleborough. In Kingston, there was a war memorial on Main Street near Hilltop Avenue that bears the names of the fallen World War II soldiers. Sergeant Forcier is listed with 11 other veterans who lost their lives in the war. In Middleborough, there is a memorial bridge sign on Plymouth Street. The sign dedication was held in November 1979. The act designating the sign reads as follows. Chapter 85. An act designating the railroad bridge at Plymouth Street and the town of Middleborough as the Sergeant Leo Forcier Memorial Bridge. Be it enacted as follows. The railroad bridge at Plymouth Street and the town of Middleborough shall be designated and known as the Sergeant Leo Forcier Memorial Bridge in memory of Sergeant Leo Forcier, who was killed in action while a member of the Armed Forces of the United States during World War II. A suitable marker bearing such designation shall be attached thereto by the Department of Public Works in accordance with the standards of said department. Approved April 9, 1979. In 2015, just prior to Memorial Day, Middleborough's Veterans Service Officer, Paul Preventure, and American Legion Post 64 historian, Bob Lessard, were replacing American flags on memorial bridges when they came upon a disturbing sight. The Leo Forcier Memorial Bridge sign had been vandalized with spray paint. A short 3 months later, the sign was replaced and rededicated. Attended by members of his family, the ceremony included a 21-gun salute by the Middleborough Veterans Council Honor Guard. After Sergeant Forcier's death, Anna eventually married again and had another daughter, Susan. Anna died on February 14, 2004. She was 89 years old. Sergeant Forcier's daughter, Ann Burns, died on September 23, 2017 in Raynham. She was 74 years old. Sergeant Leo Forcier, born October 22, 1916, died March 24, 1945. He was 29 years old. Sergeant Forcier, thank you for your service.